Hello everybody, thanks for having me tonight. I know it's a mackerel talk, but I'm pretty much going to just talk about catching Spanish because that's all I like to do. So if you just want to hear about catching spotties or anything like that, talk to Stewie. So yeah, I'll get straight into it. With the Spanish, there's probably 3 or 4 main ways I like to chase them, and depending on the time of year and where I'm fishing, will depend on what I like to use. Firstly, lures. So obviously, I'm sure everyone's familiar with trolling for Spanish, so I'll skim over that pretty quickly. What I have been using lately, luckily the boys have prepared a few here already, these new Venom V minnows. We've been using these on the last couple of trips. They troll really good at speed, stay in the water really well, track very straight. I just put, the tackle guys won't like this, but I put a little bit of single strand on the front of them, so you're not getting bitten off too many times.
What speed do you call that speed?
Oh, these will go like 12 knots. Yeah, I haven't had one skip out of the water. And they do a bigger one as well that dives really deep, but they're the perfect size, those 130s. And that's actually my favourite colour there, that one.
So what size wire?
Wire, depending on where I'm fishing and size of the fish. So early season fish, I'll probably run like, what is it, like the 59 pound, is it, Stewie, the single strand? 59?
No, 58.
58, yeah. So early season fish, I'll start with like 58 pound stuff, and then kind of where we are now, like in May, usually the numbers are, for here anyway, not as thick, but you're getting those big fat winter fish. So this is the time of year where you'll catch those 20 keggers and stuff out here. So that's when I'll bump it up to, I think, about 86 pound is the, yeah. And that's about as heavy as I go for the single strand. But yeah, with the hard bodies, for me personally, trolling, that's early season. So for our local fish, I like to troll hard bodies kind of December to February, prior to our close seasons. And then after that, as I'm sure you're all aware, very heavily fished here, lots of boats, lots of traffic. Everyone's kind of clued on how to down rig and live bait and stuff now, so you've got to just keep mixing it up, and pending the weather conditions will depend on where the fish are sitting in the water column too. So what I kind of struggle with some years is, do you want to be the first boat out there and have that crack at that dawn bite where you might run out there with dead baits, or are you spending half an hour inshore trying to catch your liveys and then go out where you might miss the first couple of fish? So either, sometimes it pays off to get your liveys and then head out. Other times you can go out there with your dead baits and turn and reel before the guys with the liveys have even come out. But another one that gets really overlooked, especially here locally, is topwater. Like, most obviously, you're all aware with our local reefs, you know, we're fishing 30 to 40 metres, but no one really throws topwater here, and we do get a lot on topwater. A mate of ours, Ryu, fishes with Jace a lot. He catches all his big fish on topwater here. And to be honest, like, as you'll see through here, probably a good portion of my biggest ever Spanish have all been caught on topwater as well. So don't be afraid to throw a few stick baits out there, especially on like rough or overcast days when you've got unsettled water. Obviously, the less boat traffic, the better. They'll come up to sit higher in the water column. I do prefer, actually there's no fins on, large floating stick bait. That way, if they bite you off, sometimes you get it back, and it'll float back up. That one's seen a few mackerel, a few GTs. That's a duo fumble, 230mm floating stick bait. I might have a couple to pass around.
You run 80 pound rod?
So the rod is probably overkill, obviously, for mackerel, but you want a long rod more so just for a long cast. So this is one of the Venom popping rods, 7'11", 7'11" P8, but you're not fishing GT drag. Like, you just set hooks and then you fish quite light on them, because you will pull hooks out of a mackerel pretty easy. So don't go too crazy on them, unless there's a shark on them, obviously, then you've got to get up a bit. Let me just see if I can But yeah, definitely, I'll always start with a floating stick bait. And I don't know if we got any, had a couple of videos, but for retrieve for them, what I've found works best for mackerel is if you punch a big floating stick bait out, as long as you can, I'll hold my rod tip high and do a quick burn and just get it skimming along the top like a fleeing bait fish. And then usually as soon as you stop that fleeing, then I'll just go into like big sweeps. And you want to hit a floating stick bait on slack line and it'll pull the head down and make it dive. If you hit them on tight line, a lot of them will skip across the water. But that fast burn usually gets all the fish's attention, and usually that first sweep is when they'll hit you. But things like these Venom V sticks, I'll just pass a few around. That's one of those fumbles. So they're all around that 220, 230 mil, floating. And then you can step down to like this. That's a rough trail, a Mosa. They're about 180. Hey? So with stick baits, I like to run a split ring and then a swivel usually, but that way I can just interchange them quickly. You can have a look at a few of those. And then what I've been also doing lately, but this is how you'll lose a few, is slow sinking stick baits. So again, that's a 150 mil. Usually if they're being a bit more stubborn and not hitting top water, or you can't keep hooks in them, go to a sinking stick bait like this. And just same again, big long cast, let it sink for a couple of seconds down into the water column, and then just start a much faster retrieve than you're floating, because when you stop moving these is when they'll bite you off. But if you keep it moving and like just like twitching and whining at the same time, you don't really want to come to a standstill because it'll be gone in a second. But they do those, that's a Venom V swim, and then these new ones, these have been really good as well. These are a diving stick bait, so they float, but then you can work them down like a hard body almost. Yeah, these are a mustard otter. Pass them around as well. But yeah, they're semi-new. They've been really good the last couple of trips up the reef especially.
Don't use wire at all, Steve, with anything?
No, not on stick baits I don't. Definitely on the hard bodies. So usually, like I said, locally, I just run a bit of single strand like that. And then that way if you want to interchange lures, you just, with your split ring pliers, take it off that front split ring and swap them over. And usually I'll troll a combination of a couple of deep divers that are tracking straight, and then the old shallow diving halco. Kind of can't beat them. Got to have a shallow one out as well. Jace's favourite. What are these? These are the 160s, aren't they, Jace? I prefer the smaller one over the 190s, or whatever they are, the big ones. But yeah, you can have a look at them as well, how I rig them anyway. And then another thing I've been playing with just of late are these new like soft swim baits. So I've been playing around with these, again, just on a bit of single strand. These are by Live Target. Yeah, it's kind of one fish per lure because they are soft, but they do swim really good. And if you don't want to catch live baits, they swim really good on a downrigger too.
Might be sponsored, mate.
Hey?
Sponsored? One per fish.
So that's pretty much, and also like big poppers and stuff. I don't tend to throw too many big poppers here locally. I favour the stick baits for mackerel, but they will eat a big popper as well. So things like that, things just to raise them from the depths. Yeah, I can't remember how many. Yeah, I slow troll them. Yeah. So any questions on lures before I move on to dead baits? No? Yeah?
Yeah, what sort of leader, like size, did you go with that?
Leader, again, it's kind of like, you know, you could get away with anything because you got a bit of wire on your hard bodies, but are you talking about stick baits or? So more so, you don't obviously need to fish heavy for mackerel. It's more so you're using a long rod, a heavy rod to get a long cast out. So for mackerel, I'm probably throwing like a 100-pound leader on. If you want to have a look at these rods later, so on that heavy popping rod, I'll usually run like 120, 150. You don't need that, but it's just so you're not cracking lures off or anything like that. And then on like that P5 to 6 one, which is probably the one that I favour more, 80 to 100 pound. Yeah. But you definitely don't need that. It's just so you're not cracking lures off and things like that. Yeah, that's probably it for lures for me. Any other questions? No? Good. All right, we'll move on to dead baits, which has already been touched on. I haven't seen those new rigs that the boys were just showing before, but so again, for me, dead baits is another kind of early season thing. If I'm too lazy to catch liveys and I've got some nice fresh slimies from the previous marlin season or gar, a lot of guys don't like gar for mackerel, but I do, purely because they do stay together well. They don't have like, their stomach doesn't fall out and you control them faster. So gar, slimy, if I'm up like Gladstone way, they like, what are they called? Yeah, where's Ross? Don't run. Those no, the wolf herring. Yeah, they've got the ribbon fish, I think they call them as well. Yeah, they kind of look like a hairtail. They've got real big teeth on them. Yeah, like from like Gladstone and that north, they're like one of the prime baits. So for things like that, your big baits, this is kind of what I like to use. So I like to use braid on a stiffer rod, purely because you're using a thicker gauge hook. So you're trolling with a bit more drag pressure and you need to really set those hooks. So that rig there is kind of for like your bonito, you put a wolf herring or something on that. Again, feel free to have a look at these when I'm finished. They'll just be up here. But yeah, that's kind of like your bonito rig, small mac tuna, legal size tailor, small mackerel. Yeah. And then for your slimies and stuff like that, gar, obviously a bit lighter, but still I prefer braid, fishing heavier drag, just to really set those hooks. There's lots of different dead bait rigs. I'll have a look at those other ones that the boys were talking about before. These TT ones, they go good as well. Yeah, there's heaps. The main thing is with your dead baits is check them in the water before you let them out. If they're not swimming good, don't put them out because they're not going to get eaten. So play around with your rigs. There's no right or wrong one. Some will work better for different baits. Current's a big thing, whether you're trolling into the current or with it, because as your bait gets older and softer, and if they're not that fresh, they will deteriorate quickly. So and always be checking your baits, be very proactive with it. And I like to rig my dead baits on single strand again. I know some guys like multi, but I prefer single. And same deal again, I just kind of run those early season fish when they're like, you know, more like that 6 to 10 kilo size. I'll start with like your 58 pound, 69, and then if you're finding that you're getting bitten off now and then, or that you'll have the odd one bite through your wire, then I'll kind of ramp it up to your 86. But for local fish here, I've never had to go heavier than 86 pound. And then I'll like, you know, 30-ish centimetres. Sometimes I'll go a little bit shorter, but then when we get the odd wahoo come through, the whole lot's gone real quick. So yeah, you just play around with all that stuff until you find something that you're happy with. There's no right or wrong, in my opinion anyway. Any questions about dead baits?
How heavy do you have your drag?
Well, depends. If I'm using like a bonito or something like that, where you've really got to set them, I fish pretty heavy, and then I'll gun the boat when I get a bite, and then once it's, as you all know, it's getting worse with sharks too. So now it's not, you know, you're not fishing heavy drag for the fish, you're fishing heavier drag to try and get the fish in before sharks get them. So it just varies. What I do when I go out and fish, the first mackerel I hook, I'll fight it as if there's no sharks there. If I land it, beautiful. If it gets shark, then I know the next one, I'm going to town on it and just give it as much as I possibly can. And then if I lose another one to sharks, I just kind of move on. I'm not going to just hang
With
around.
your dead baits and live baits, similar to drag?
No, I fish much lighter on live baits. Yeah, because as you'll see when I get to the live baits, like I run a much finer gauge hook. So, and I tend to favour mono sometimes as well. Just depends again. If the sharks are bad, I go back to my braid, and then I'll just run like a 10, 15 metre leader on that. But if sharks aren't an issue, then yeah, I tend to favour mono, and I'll use a thinner gauge hook so I can fish. I'm fishing softer drag, because a big thing that a lot of guys do is you're pulling hooks on mackerel. So with the mono, you've got that stretch in it, and if you're using a finer gauge hook, once that hook's set, like I've caught them where they've just been hooked in the tiniest little bit of skin, you know, and that's it. Whereas if you were giving it to it with a lot of drag pressure, you're going to pull that hook, or straighten your hook if you're using a thin gauge hook. Any other dead bait questions?
Do you let it sink like often? Or?
So, depending on where I'm fishing, so if I'm fishing tweed and stuff like that, where there's a lot more current, your baits don't get very deep. So that's where you'll find, like things like these, they vary in weight. So you might go to like a 60 or 80 gram, stuff like that, just to get it down in the current. Places like Tweed where it's hard to catch live bait as well, that's where I'll favour dead baits and top water, like Fidos and the 9 Mile and stuff like that. That's where I like to fish top water a lot, because you fish in shallower water as well, and there's a lot of bycatch around there. But here, you know, we don't get a lot of current on our close reefs here, so I'm always trying to get away with everything I use as light as possible, whether that's, you know, thinnest gauge hooks, the lightest wire, least weight, because then it presents more natural. But yeah, again, just good fresh baits. Ideally, I like to catch my own, cryovac them, look after them like that. A lot of ones you'll get from bait shops and stuff can be a bit beat up, and as soon as you thaw them out, they're soft and don't last very long. Yeah. Some are good, but the best ones are always the ones that you freeze and look after yourself. Yeah. Any other dead bait questions? Okay, live bait. So, this is what everyone's been doing for the last few years now. I'm pretty sure most of you have seen a downrigger these days. As I touched on before, obviously the Gold Coast is very heavily fished. You know, I think leading into these closures and bag limit changes we've had, I think we had some of our best mackerel seasons number-wise. So I know the you know, the research and stuff they've done was for Queensland in general, so I don't know how other parts of the state were performing, but very frustrating to see Northern New South Wales having back-to-back record seasons because we're letting all our fish through to them. But as the fishing's gotten tougher over the last few years, obviously live bait fishing, downriggers, like I said before, our reefs are quite deep. You're fishing a lot of 30 to 40 metres kind of thing, so guys are doing a lot of downrigging. These are, well, you can probably just pass it around in the whole thing, but for me, I'm pretty pedantic with my live baiting. 1 rig per fish. I don't muck around. Once I've got a fish, I'll just either cut that rig off, throw it in the box and I'm tying a new rig on, or I've got another rod ready to go and I'm straight back in the water and I've got a bait down to that next fish already. These boxes are probably the best thing that I've found for keeping your rigs so far. They still tangle up a little bit. You can get these from Kevy's.
Sponsor plug.
Oh, actually, before I pass them around, I'll just give you a little rundown of. They're a stock standard mackerel rig, nothing fancy. Again, early season stuff. I'm using your thinner, lighter gauge single strand. Most of your live baits you're using here are like yakkers and slimies, so you don't need large hooks. I'm running like a 4.0 through the nose, 3.0 or 4.0, and then usually a size 1 to a 1.0 treble in the back. And then if you are running bigger baits, then I'll step it up to that heavier wire, still single strand, but I'll go to like a 6.0 on the nose, and then I just do, like they're probably 1.0s or 2.0s, and then I just do a running treble. So pending the size of that, you know, tailor, big yakka, slimy, whatever, you got 1 through the nose, 1 through the back, and then this one you can kind of pin anywhere through the middle. So it just gives you a little bit more coverage on the bait. Again, just make sure your bait's swimming good and that it's happy before you send it either down on your downrigger or whether you're trolling it on the surface. But you don't want your bait kinked, you want it sitting nice and straight. There's different ways to rig them. Some guys like to come with that front hook through the nose, like through the mouth or through the nose, depending on what bait I'm using. I'll swap and change. But yeah, have a look at the rigs anyway if you want. And I just try to have that pretty full most of the time.
The trailing treble swim through?
Nah, not me personally. No. And then so if I'm live baiting, I'm usually running at least 2 rods. Very similar. So this is a Venom blank. This is the P2-5 blank, the same as that one that I use for my dead baits. This is just custom built by Brad Joe. So you can have a look at that as well if you want. But for down rigging, I like a softer tip because you want it to sit like loaded in your downrigger so you can really see that bite. Because a lot of times you get 2 bites on the downrigger. You'll either get what I call a soft bite where they've picked the bait up and whether you're using a clip or like a clip on your downrigger ball or a rubber band, if they pick it up and swim towards the boat, a lot of times you won't see it. Your rod will either just come slack and you'll see that pressure come off it. And sometimes, even like if you get a small fish like a little cobia or a remora or a school mackerel or something like that, you could be towing it around for a while. So if you're using a stiffer rod, you won't see as many of those bites. Whereas if you've got something a bit softer in the tip, whether it's spin or overhead, I just favour overheads. I just feel like with the ratchet, something like this, Torium or Trinidad's, they're another one that I use. I like a loud ratchet, something that won't overrun when you're sending it down on the ball. But yeah, softer rod. Tend to favour mono unless sharks are around. Mainly because, like I said, you get more stretch in the line, so you're not pulling hooks. You don't have to go as hard on the fish. And because I'm using quite a thin gauge hook, you can still go very hard. Like I've caught quite a few black marlin on those, just mackerel fishing. I've caught kingies, cobia, dewies, snapper, like all sorts of stuff. So
What size mono?
I vary depending the baits. So usually I'll have like 4 or 5 of these rods in the boat. I'll go as light as 20 pound up to 50 pound. So if I've got like big live baits, like a legal tailor, trevally, small mackerel, something like that. 25 or something? Yeah, 35, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, and then, you know, this is more like your yakka slimy rig.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but, yeah, anything that kind of...
That's about 25, 30 pound, is it?
Yeah, that's, I think, 30, I think, on that. Yeah. Yeah, have a look at the end, or I won't pass this around. And then, any orders with Brad, I get 20%, so...
Oh,
He just found that out now.
yeah.
Yeah, so, and again, I just run one of those on the surface, 1, sometimes 2 on the downrigger, but with our restricted bag limits now, like, it's over pretty quick, you know, if you go out there, catch your 2 and you're done, so. Any questions on the live baiting?
So you said you have preferences which way you book them.
Depends on the bait.
Yeah, so which baits, what?
So, well, like, for yakkers, I like to go through the mouth, where a lot of guys like to go through that way. I've caught them both, like, it doesn't really matter, but me personally, I find that they stay live a bit better like that. Slimies, I'm the same, I'm through that way. And then things like trevally, tailor, things like that, I'll go that way. Bigger baits, usually I'll go through sideways. But all those smaller stuff, yakkers and slimies, I tend to go through the mouth. And then,
No better
I seem to think they do. Ideally, you don't want your bait to be down there too long. You want it eaten as quickly as possible. But another big thing that like guys do is they get lazy, and you don't, especially if you're running a manual downrigger, you you're marking all these fish, you're moving your depth, you know, they're sitting at 10 metres, they're sitting at 20, they're sitting at 30, whatever. You might have had like a little school mackerel or something pick it off, or it's been chopped in half, and you could be towing around no bait, half a bait, a little remora, whatever. So I'm big on checking my baits pretty regularly, especially if I'm seeing marking fish. I'm lazy, I'm running electric downriggers, so it's not as hard. I just bang, up it comes, check it, yeah, still good, send it back down. Or, you know, like I said, with our restricted bag limits, if you've got 20 liveys in there and that one's looking a bit iffy, just pull it off, put another one on, send it back down. The fresher the bait, you know, the better it's going to be, the more attention it's going to attract down there. Any other questions?
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah?
How come you only use those rigs once? What's the go there?
Well, those ones are quite light single strand, so they do kink easy. And like I said, I just want to get a bait. Like I've usually got 4 or 5 of those rigs on rods ready to go. So if I'm solo, you know, I've got my one fish, I'm going home, that's it now. But prior to these changes, I would just have the boat in autopilot and I'd grab another rod, put another bait on, or I'd even grab my, if it was a downrigger bait that went off, I'm just grabbing my surface one, popping that in the clip, sending it down, because, you know, my last fish just come from the downrigger, so I want to get another bait down there quickly. Usually, yeah, I'll just cut that rig off, throw it in the box. I've got 50 made up, so it's no big deal, and then I'll come back, process that fish once I've got 2 fresh baits out in the water, because a lot of times you need to capitalise on that bite. So if you're mucking around getting photos, you know, trying to get your rigs out, trying to straighten your wire and stuff.
So you're clipping that rig, not tying it. Are you tying it or clipping it?
So that's obviously tied to the line, but then the line, I run a clip, I don't run bands. If I'm running dead baits on a downrigger, then I'm banding it. But yeah, if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got 3 or 4 different clips. I didn't bring any down here. They all work good. Just, I like the clips. I think it's a Scotty one. It's a black and green one. And I like it because a lot of clips are 2 separate bits. They've got 2 separate pads and the line can get caught in behind it. Whereas the Scotty one is like this. So you can bury your line as far back as you want and it's not going to get caught over anything. Because if you let your rigger down and, you know, you're halfway through a turn or you don't have enough speed up, that line can tangle around your rigger ball, can tangle around the clip, and then as soon as you get a bite, it just pops your line. So you've got to make sure all that's good. You've got a bit of speed going, everything's tracking nicely, it's not going to tangle up with your surface line. Yeah. The biggest thing for me is just the little things. Just keep it simple, like they're not flash rigs. Don't need to overcomplicate things. Don't be lazy. Check your baits regularly. The fresher the bait, the better. Nothing special. Just, yeah, those little 1%ers. A lot of people are like, I've been guilty of it. Like, oh yeah, 20 minutes. I'll check that bait, and then you check it and it's chopped in half, you know, and you're wondering why you've gone over 6 good shows of fish and haven't got a bite. And then you might have missed that bite, and then you're going home with that mackerel. Any other questions? Yeah.
What's your drop back on your rigger?
What's my drop back? Again, varies. Depends how many baits I'm fishing, because sometimes I'll run 2 baits off a rigger. So if I'm running 2, I'll stagger them. I'll run one quite short and one long so that they don't tangle. If I'm running one single one, 20-ish metres. Yeah. 20-ish behind the clip, yeah. Yeah, I'll let a bit out.
You ever run a slider on it?
A what, sorry?
A slider?
No, what's that? Slide it, did you say?
Slider, so it's just another rig, another clip.
Oh yeah. That's what I mean. Like when I'm running 2.
2 off one.
Yeah. Or sometimes I'll just run 2 separate downriggers. Yeah. Just depends on the conditions. But now, like if I'm solo, you can only keep one fish. So yeah, just keep it simple. Like when you overcomplicate things, you're just getting more tangles. You know, you're just creating more drama. So if we're fishing a comp and got a couple of other capable sets of hands in the boat, then you can start doing some fancy stuff. But the simpler you keep it, the more fish you'll catch. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, so when you say fishing diamond, for instance, something like that,
Where's Diamond?
well, you know,
Never heard of it.
I see it all the time. Say you got your downrigger down or whatever, 25 metres, whatever, and then when you get hit, from that time you get hit, that lag, is that just like when you
On a
see
soft bite?
shoot gun it? Like with
No, that's
live
dead baits. Dead baits, I'll gun it. Not on liveys.
What about the liveys, right? So you're running the downrigger, and then from the time it hits, you'll see like the line flick or something.
Yeah, so going back to that, I kind of missed that. Yeah, so you get kind of 2 bites on the downrigger. I kind of touched on that soft bite, which I think you're talking about. So usually, you know, I'm trying to watch that as much as I can. If I see that rod tip come soft, where it hasn't popped the clip where the fish has swum towards the boat, or he has popped it but he's swimming towards you, you just need to get on that reel straight away and wind until you come tight.
Yeah.
And then, you know, either set hooks, because a lot of times, well, especially if you're running rubber bands, the pressure of the band breaking is enough to set one of those thin gauge hooks.
Yeah.
But if you're running a clip sometimes and you get a soft bite and you've got to wind up on him, then you kind of want to set. And then the other one is the one that you love, where it just cracks out and it's just screaming and it's on. Which is, you know, it varies. Some days they're all soft bites, some days they're all those crazy ones where they just carry on straight away. Obviously those ones you just struggle to get them out of the holder sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so your soft bites, you need to be watching, you need to be aware of what's
You
happening.
jump on the reel, start like you
Yeah, if you see, yeah.
gun the boat or
Well,
not?
sometimes, especially in rough conditions, you'll just have them pop out of the clip where it wasn't even a bite. But you need to treat everything as if it was a bite. So just get on it, wind up, wind.
See if it takes up or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. And then once you've done that anyway, you've either got to reset it, so you're pulling it in to check your bait,
Yeah.
or you've got a fish on, ideally. Dave?
With your mono and grey,
Yep.
do you touch it differently with the downrigger to the clip? Like one with an elastic band, or do you do the twist and...
Yeah, well, if I'm clipping a live bait, I twist and then bury it in the clip. So like I'll just loop the line, wrap it a dozen times, and then I put the loop deep into the clip. If I'm trolling dead baits, then I'm just connecting like a rubber band around my line as if you're putting it in your outrigger, and then that's going in the clip. Well, not in the clip. I run it through like a snap swoop, like a fast attached clip kind of thing, where it's like not going to open, so it just breaks the band.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the pressure of that band is usually enough to set the hooks. So, yeah. But if I'm trolling dead baits, not on a downrigger, like where I've just got like a weighted head, and then like you've been playing around with Sammy's new jet heads
Yeah,
and
I have,
weighted ones.
yeah.
I was trying to get a few to bring down here, but they've been going really good as
They're
well.
tracking.
Yeah, because you don't need a good fresh dead bait. You're just using a strip bait in it. So if you haven't seen or familiar with Sammy Hitsky fishing on YouTube, I did a session with him last season or the year before, I can't remember. He's got a clip, he's got a video on his YouTube of live baiting out here, but he also does these like weighted jet heads and like a floating one as well. And the skirt kind of sits forward over the head, but then the pressure of the wash of the boat, pushes it over. And you don't need to run like a nice slimy or anything. You're running just like a flesh bait in it, so you don't have to change them as regularly, and they work really good. Yeah, they create a good bubble trail and stuff as well.
Yeah.
But they're available on his website.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
So you've got to rig them yourself, so you only get the heads.
yeah, but they're simple and they're something different. So especially I found with those early season fish, they've been really good.
Yeah, that's exactly what I found.
Yeah.
But the problem was I had one last 5 minutes, so it was brand new. I
Yeah.
rigged it up and fit through the wire.
Yeah.
That was the green jet head. The pink lead head, right, lasted all season. Also put fish on it.
Yeah.
Really, really good.
Yeah, they are really good. But yeah, have a look on his videos on his YouTube anyway. He's got a few sessions fishing locally, like up off Morton and stuff like that. Dave's used them down here, I've used them down here. They work really good. Any other questions? Beautiful.
What's your biggest?
Biggest what?
Settle.
Go back and take measures. Nah, locally, I don't know, I haven't weighed them. Caught a few over 20 kilo, like that around that 1.5 metres. Yeah. May's the best month for those big fish.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. So like, we're getting towards what we would consider the end of our season. Not as many fish, but big fat winter fish coming back up the coast. So we kind of miss that good flurry of them coming through because of our closures now, where we're getting the good numbers. But usually like May through to even the start of July, if you still want to have a look for them, that's when you'll get those. Yeah, I don't know if photos have been going through any sounder shots, but who was I talking to before? Joel. So I've got some. Have they been cycling through?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you seen many sounder shots?
No.
No. Okay. Brett, where are you? Oh man. So yeah, there'll be some sounder shots. Now, you'll see when you come, as you all would have seen, you'll see like a bait ball and a big stack of fish hanging off them. Yeah, that's great, but I find the bigger fish are those 1s and 2s, and they'll be by themselves, not even on bait sometimes, and they're the ones that you want to get. They're your big bone fish, which is like now May. But you know, when you're marking like those schools of fish, you know, these are our typical Gold Coast Spanish, those kind of 7, 8, 9 kilo kind of size ones. Some years we get lucky, some years we have some good years where they're like 12, 15 kilo, but yeah, the last, yeah, they're not big fish, but like that, you know, I like when you can finding, you know, half a dozen and stuff like that. Your big schools of fish are usually those smaller 6 to 8 kilo fish. You'll take whatever you can get, obviously, but yeah, your bigger fish like that, well, that was on top water, that one, but we get fish that size out here, and usually you're not marking schools of them, it'll be 1s and 2s. That was just the other week, that was this season.
Is that mean back swimming out the back of the
That was that day, yeah. That was that day.
Yeah.
Lotus Creek, see?
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, there's probably not much to talk about in there. There's just like an assortment of top water ones, live bait ones, dead bait ones, downrigger ones. That's a May fish. That was about 145, that one. I think there's a brag map photo. See, shows like that, that's where you're catching, you know, those 6 to 8 kilo ones predominantly, but I think I've put some screenshots of lone big fish.
This season's been predominantly downrigger fish.
I've only fished twice this season. I've been away a fair bit and busy with work, so the 2 times I have been out, I've had my 2 mackerel in 10 minutes both times. So there's no shortage of them. Yeah, that's the other best thing about top water fishing. Like the aerial strikes are just next level. It's super addictive. Yeah, sharp.
Have you found the season's been hot and cold, like they're on Sunday and then Tuesday they're shut down, but they're still there?
Oh, like I said, I've only fished twice this season locally. I've been up in the NT for a bit and working a lot, so, and we've had shit weather obviously, but yeah, the few times I've been out, I don't know, I'm hearing lots of mates that have been going out have had lots of shark issues this season, so, which is very frustrating because, you know, when you've got these closures and restricted bag limits, the last thing you want to do is be feeding them to sharks.
Steve, last year I think you said something at the last classic, like you got your fish when the water cleaned up, when clean water came through. Like, do you actively look for them?
I do definitely, like, if we've had a lot of southerlies and that water's good out there, the bite's always better. You know, if we've had a lot of rain and it's dirtied up and there's debris in the water, and if you are down rigging, you would all be familiar with all that shit you get on your line. What that is, I don't know, but it's super annoying trying to clean it off, and sometimes it's real thick. Yeah, the bluer the water, the better. Mackerel, you will catch them in that greeny stuff, and then the other thing is you never really know, because a lot of that dirty water's just in the top anyway. So you might find you catch them less on your surface livey, but you're still getting a few down deep. But again, then you need to be checking your bait more because it's covered in that weedy shit. Any other questions? No? Give me all my lures back.
In your pockets.
Alright.
Your library rigs are probably a little bit empty now.
Yeah.
What months?
Yeah. But yeah, if you just want to look at any of the rods I use and you know, just look at the rigs and lures and stuff, yeah, feel free to come out.
You've got to take anything up the back there. 'cause it's
Yeah.
quite-
All done. All right. Okay. Well, big thanks to Steve for that.